We're live.
Alright, folks, welcome to tonight's installment of The Left, the Right, and the Absurd. Tonight we are going to be finishing up our topic from last week, which was feminism. We'll be touching a little bit on consent and some more on just feminism in general. And then we're going to be discussing religion and atheism and stuff like that. Basically, most of the things correlating to religion.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we'll go ahead and jump right into our first topic for tonight.
Which is consent and what feminists mean by consent and things like that. And I really don't think consent's a really hard topic to grasp, because if someone just says no, stop, that's where you just respect and just stop. But I mean, when people just have for some reason, some people have a hard time understanding consent. I mean, there's a difference between eating and being force-fed.
Yeah, and that's something that I think we kind of run into problems with when it comes to that. Is like, if a female is drunk and she has sex with a guy and the guy is sober, oftentimes he can be charged with rape, regardless of whether she was willing or whatever.
Yeah, I think I brought it up last week. There are certain things that need to be addressed with all that, but if it is in a consenting environment, but again, there's a difference between taking advantage of someone and both just wanting to fuck each other.
Yeah, there's some gray area in this topic, obviously.
And of course, I'm not some expert on this topic with drunk sex and things like that, and I'm not going to act like I am. And I think some of these issues do need to be addressed, and I'll be honest, I don't think I'm the person to address these issues, and I think a lot of people, even feminists, either shy away from it because they don't know what to say, or it's just too broad of a topic and there's too many factors in it to address. But
it's absolutely got to be a case-by-case basis, and I think a lot of the problems we run into is that if both parties are drunk, I don't think if we want really true equality, I don't think one should be held to a different standard than the other. If both are drunk, then I don't think either of them should be charged with rape, or both of them should be charged with rape, but keep it,
I'm just saying, if both were consenting, obviously there was consent, and if it comes to the case where one was taking advantage of the other, then it's rape, no matter what.
Right.
And I think opening also comes back to things like we're talking about patriarchal norms and things like that, and this also goes into rape and how men are supposed to be seen as stronger, and when it comes to male rape, it's either made into a joke or they're just not taken seriously.
All right. Well, what about this? What about a hypothetical here? Actually, it's not necessarily hypothetical, but let's just say there's a case, clear and cut. Someone, we're not going to deal with gender right now. They clearly had sex with someone who was drunk, and they themselves were not drunk. How many of you consider that rape, or at least sexual assault?
It's got to be a case-by-case basis. Because if the drunk person comes onto the sober person, they have sex. I don't really whether it's a male or a female. I don't think that's rape, because the drunk person
there's other factors that go into did the drunk person consent? Did the sober person consent?
I guess my question is if you're drunk, can you consent, or what's the point
I'll give you some anecdotal evidence on this one, and I'm not gonna get into fucking details, but whenever I'm drunk and you want to you're talking about having sex with somebody, I don't think whenever you're drunk that you do anything that you wouldn't normally do under most circumstances. It's just alcohol lowers your inhibitions, so you just do things that you wouldn't normally do if you were sober. So I don't think that in most situations where you're having sex with someone while you're drunk, usually it's both people are drunk, but sometimes it's one person's sober and the other's not, and that gets kind of fucky. But I think if you're drinking and you are having and you're wanting to have sex with someone, I think that you're going to do that regardless of whether or not I don't know. Alcohol helps you have sex, obviously, but that's just what I'm saying.
To add on, while I think the issue of consent is the most important part of this scenario, like were they two consenting people? If one wasn't consenting, obviously yes, but if psychologically speaking, and there's a great book on this called "Mistakes Were Made," but not by me. Alcohol actually has no true effect like that on your ability to make decisions. You are no more rash. It's all psychological. I'm trying to remember the word, but
What was this book called, Cole?
Yeah, because I want to read that because I don't know.
the book was called "Mistakes Were Made, but Not by Me." It's
Okay.
on cognitive dissonance.
Interesting.
And the whole idea behind the piece on alcohol in the book was that it actually has no true effect on one's inhibitions or one's ability to like people say, oh well, I was drunk, I didn't mean to say that. In actuality, they had every intention to say it and they wanted to, but they felt this sense that they were more capable of saying it when they were drunk, when in actuality it was just this sense, it was just this this idea that has been instilled in their head that you're more likely to do things while drunk.
I don't know if that's necessarily the case, and I haven't looked at the research on it. Like, I'll definitely check that book out, but I don't know. Like, whenever I'm drunk, like, I feel like I say some shit that I wouldn't say normally, like, whenever I'm sober, and I don't know that's... I feel like alcohol has that effect on you, though. Like, I'm not entirely sure. Like I said, I haven't looked at the research or that book, but I'll check it out.
I can't remember the thing. It's something correlating to the brain. I can't remember the... it's some sort of... theory. I can't remember what it's called, though, for the life of me.
Alright, yeah, no worries.
Along the lines of, like, you don't feel like you're going to have more, like, the ramifications are going to be different if you're drunk. Like, if I say something, like, that I normally wouldn't say when I was sober that was, like, extremely offensive to someone, there may be that thought that, oh, well, I'll get away with it because I'm drunk right now. Does that have something to do with what you're talking about?
Somewhat. That could be the train of thought that people go under, is that because you're drunk, you're allowed to say things like that, essentially, just because you feel people will look at you and say, well, he's drunk, he's blah, 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 when in actuality, none of that's true.
Okay. I have a question for you guys. How do you guys feel about women being drafted?
Well,
I don't think anyone should be drafted.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Because,
Nobody.
like, I know people talk about, like, the thing with the draft, and, like, again, because from an ethics perspective, I don't believe that anyone should be drafted, and people say, oh, but women don't have to sign up for mandatory, whatever the fuck it was called.
Selective service.
Yeah, whatever the fuck. But the thing with it is that I would say that the reason that men are more like supposed to sign up for it is because they're more seen as, like, fighters throughout history, and that women are supposed to stay at home and take care of things.
Like, you could make the argument that the fact that women can't be drafted is that it's actually sexist because it implies women are weak.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I don't believe in the draft period, but I would say that it's sexist on both sides. Is that men were supposed to be seen as fighters and they're supposed to be willing to die for the country, but it's also sexist in the sense that it's that women are supposed to stay at home and because they're not able to deal with fighting or whatever it may be. And I would say it's sexist on both sides. And again, I don't believe in the draft period. So
Absolutely, the draft is something that needs to. Like, obviously, with the absence of government, there would be no draft. So that, but what, like some of these, like as the draft is in place now, and you have to sign up for selective service if you're a male. I think it's foolish to force women to do the same, because evolutionarily, like the roles that emerged were there for like biological and evolutionary reasons. So men were the fighters, and like women were like the caregivers.
Yeah, there's a difference between evolutionary and social constructs and what was decided for like socially constructed roles. I mean, there's a difference there. But
if you like look back at history, though, the whole point of war, when you fought it, if you had to fight it, you are going to try to do it in the territory of your opponent, because what I've studied on this, and what I've come to the conclusion is that when you fight a war, you're going to do it in the opponent's territory for the reason of protecting your women and your children at home. You're trying to keep them as far away from the violence, the conflict, and the bloodshed that you possibly can.
What about the historical societies that actually utilized women as warriors and fought some of the most?
There's no doubt examples like that exist, but for the most part, it's been almost entirely men, and this is like for a reason. So I kind of think it foolish because men, like, biologically, like, they're bigger, they're stronger, they're like, most of the time, men are better fighters than women, and obviously there's exceptions to this. But the point that I'm making here is that I think it kind of foolish to force women to go into something that they're already going to be worse at, especially in a wartime situation where it's an unjust war. I just think it's foolish.
I wouldn't say that women are worse at fighting because, again, warfare has advanced in the way that things are fought.
And wouldn't that be a shot at pretty much every woman that's joined the service? I mean, if we're not going to let them, if we're going to go off the guise that the draft does exist and go under this scenario, wouldn't it also then be wrong to allow them to sign up in the first place?
Because they're doing that voluntarily, and I have no problem with women serving. What I do have a problem with is forcing women into something that they are like biologically worse at. Because
again, I wouldn't say that they're biologically worse at it because I mean, I don't want to point this out, but I want to go over to like what's going on now in Syria and like Kurdistan. There's the YPG and the YPJ, women's units and the men's units. I mean, the women's units are pretty fucking great, and they're pretty well trained. It's all about the kind of training you receive, not only whether you're...
There's a difference between women in the Middle East who are generally like very hardy people, they're like very, very like in shape, and like a lot of American women.
Well,
right? You can say that there's a difference there.
If we're going to go off this whole biological thing, then it still stands that it's wrong to have them fight in wars in general, even if it's voluntary. Because if your whole guise is going under the idea that they're biologically speaking not fit for it, then there's no sense in having people women even voluntarily sign up for it, because under the idea that they're biologically not fit for it, that would create a conflict of interest with them even voluntarily doing it, because they still wouldn't be biologically fit to do it.
I'm not saying they're biologically unfit. What I'm saying is they're biologically inferior when it comes to fighting. That's what I'm saying. And then the point that I wanted to make here So the point I'm making here is not that women should not go into war. It's that they should not be forced to do so by a government. I don't
think anybody was advocating that anybody be forced to do shit by the government. I mean, like, do you know what this podcast is about? Like, we're all about volunteerism there, so.
So the draft exists now. Like, that's something that we can't escape right now. The government exists. So under the bounds, like, the government's going to exist and the draft is going to exist. I would rather that women are not forced into it.
Okay, but the point still stands with the whole concept of biological inferiority, that are we to deem a certain sex biologically inferior to mandatorily join? What's the difference between them voluntarily joining? They still have that inferiority.
Well, did we not just say that this podcast is about freedom?
Yes, but you're trying to say like they're biologically inferior and that they shouldn't be forced to join, but I feel like this is...
Also, I don't understand why you would want an inferior fighting force. Like, why would that make any sense?
I don't, but if people want to choose to do it, I'm not going to bar them from doing so.
So you're not against people joining up to, like, fight and kill other people, like, unjustly? That's not a thing you're against?
I'm not for war, but if we're going to fight war, I'd rather have the people that are best at doing it being the ones that are doing it. Now, obviously, there's exceptions to this. I'm not saying that all women are inferior when it comes to fighting. Because
I feel like it comes.
Would you say that the men that join private military corporations that kill innocents for fun, because they're biologically superior and fit to fight, they should be doing that?
No, I'm not saying that wars should be fought. What I'm saying is if war is inevitable and it's a necessity,
But it's not.
innocent people to die, that's ridiculous.
But that's what happens when we send people like those that join. Because speaking from experience, most of the people I know, especially living under the fear of living through the 9/11 attacks and the fear that those grows for most people in America, most of the people that join and the fact that the psychological evaluation that pre-goes enlisting in the military is utter shit.
True.
Most of them suffer from severe Islamophobia and react entirely negatively towards the people in the Middle East. And those are the people that we're currently fighting. So would it not be better to allow these biologically inferior people that aren't best at fighting go over there so that they're not immediately shoot first, ask questions second?
Well, I'd rather that we didn't have war at all.
Yes. But
Then
I
why
would just
don't
like
we
to-
advocate
that's
for
not
that
the
and
point.
say I don't give a fuck what's going on now? Like what we need to focus on is not having a draft in the war. Like the whole point of arguing this fucking like to whether or not women should be allowed to participate in the draft is pointless. There should be no draft, and that's the whole point that we should be arguing. I know you're saying it's inescapable at the moment, but you don't advance that cause just by saying or getting bogged down in the fucking mire of arguing this petty issue. It's like, oh well, women shouldn't be allowed to do this or X, Y, and Z within the context of this thing that we're trying to eliminate. Like, there's no point to do that.
All right.
I understand where you're coming from, Eric, but think about it this way: if we're going to be fighting wars and we send people that are biologically inferior, they're going to have a bad time. Like
I don't want to be fighting wars though. You're missing the entire
I
fucking
know,
point
I
of it.
understand what you're saying, but again, it's something that happens, and we can't get away from that right now. So
All right, wait.
Whatever.
But that right there is not true. We can get away from it.
Yeah, you fucking
Well,
educate people and
you-
tell them, like, this is what the fuck is going on. This is why you're going over there to fight and die. And you
Point-
educate people so they don't fucking do that anymore. That's what we need to be doing, not going, well, I don't think the X, Y, and Z genders should be able to fucking go to war. That's bullshit.
Yeah, and I just wanted to bring it up because currently it's more about get what kind of training you get because again the YPJ fighters are just as good as the YPJ fighters, if not better. They get the same amount.
Hold on, I have a
getting the
question,
same
Patrick.
training.
Patrick, so if we were gonna have a violent revolution to overthrow the government, would you bar women from doing that?
Of course not. I'm not barring women from doing anything. I just don't want to make them have to do it without their consent.
Again, again, this comes back to the draft. The draft shouldn't be there, and a lot of this comes to this. In my opinion, a fucking retarded anti-feminist standpoint, where it's like, oh, but men have to sign up for the draft, and again, no one should have to sign up for the draft. Period.
Yeah, no one should have to sign up for the draft. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you on that.
But like, I would say that it comes back to more of like reasoning on why they have men fight the draft and why men sign up for the draft and why they have women stay home and a bunch of other things. And it comes back to like not just what you're bringing up, evolutionary advantages or whatever, biological superiority or inferiority. It goes back to like some more social things, and that men are supposed to, again, it goes back to like history, and like men are supposed to be the fighters, women are supposed to stay at home, and a bunch of other things like that. And whether it be, it's just how we're supposed to be seen as society. And when
because men are disposable, right? Like evolutionarily, like in our species, men are very disposable because one man can repopulate a lot of with a lot of different women and have a lot of children versus having one woman who can only pop out a baby every 9 months, right? So men in that way are more disposable, and for that reason, I think that they should be the ones that if we have to fight, I don't want to fight, but if we have to, I feel like they should be the ones that are doing it.
But we don't have to. That's the
We don't. No.
And educating people instead of on things like this, we should instead educate them on why not to, and why to decline enlisting in the military, and why to decline obeying the draft were it to ever occur again, or things like that. We should be teaching these people why we fight the wars we do, and the fact that I just recently, I don't know where it was from, I saw an excerpt from an article about certain countries dropping such insane amounts of bombs that it is becoming difficult for our military corporations back home to manufacture the bombs fast enough. And all it's doing is furthering the military-industrial complex, which if we stopped listening to the government's fear-mongering and stuff like that, we could actually possibly convince these people, and if we could actually discuss these ideas of the fear-mongering that goes on to keep us afraid of what's happening outside when we should really be focusing on the fascism that's coming in from the inside.
We're at around the 20-minute mark, just a heads up.
It's unfortunate, I think, because I don't know if you guys know many Marines, but they are so brainwashed when it comes to war. They're like, oh, well, we're fighting for your freedom. No, you're not.
Yeah.
And a lot of that goes back to education, and we need to get the government out of fucking education, because I think that's a majority of the problem. Like, that's where a lot of that shit stems, because
and right now, knowing that it's not an easy thing to do, the best thing that people can do is those like ourselves that understand these things,
right,
do things like we're doing today and teach people, hey man, don't fucking do that.
Yeah. I think on that note, we probably ought to transition up. We're at the 20-minute mark, so let's go ahead and move over to God and Atheism.
Yeah, if you want to. So
God, I think as far as that goes, well, as an agnostic, I neither reject nor like acknowledge the existence of God. I just say that I don't know. And I think I was Catholic. I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic Mass until I got my confirmation at 16, and then I just never went to Mass again. And I think that's because the Catholic faith was something that, like, I was raised like, oh, you have to do this, and then you'll get confirmed, and then you go to Mass, and I was just like, yeah, I'm not really a huge fan of all the, man-made rules that you have to go through it all the time, and I'd rather just figure out my own spirituality without the bounds of some religion that is, a lot of parts have a lot of flaws to it.
Yeah, and I think personally, because my dad was a Catholic, my mother grew up Jewish, and I grew up with a balance of both. And I find religion and the culture that surrounds it extremely interesting. But I think when it dives into certain aspects of society is when it can become harmful.
It's toxic, I think. It's like a toxic environment.
When it comes back to before we were talking about this, before we actually started up, we were talking about what's his fucking
Mikhail Bakunin.
Yes, in his book God and the State, he talks about how the state can uses God to their advantage and things like that, and just how you can use God to basically justify any action that the state will use.
Right, divine right of kings from the past and shit like that, absolutely.
Eric, as a nihilist, are you an atheist or an agnostic, or?
Well, technically you take the atheist position. It's like, but personally, it's that there's not sufficient evidence, so I reject it until there is basically the position, is what it is.
So more of an agnostic type view.
I grew up Catholic, went to a Catholic school up until 8th grade. In 9th grade, I pretty much stopped believing in God and went with the term atheist. Same reason Eric said, I see no evidence that there is a God, so I don't believe in him. And I'll just be honest with you, like, I personally really dislike religion.
I do too.
I think it's
curbs
free thinking, and it's overall detrimental to society in some ways, not always, obviously.
Yeah, but the reason I say religion is interesting is because of the way it affects culture, and because, because since I grew up around Jewish people, Jewish culture is extremely diverse, extremely interesting, and the sects in Judaism have varying ways of culture. I just think that's extremely interesting. But again, it comes back to how it affects society overall and what kind of things it promotes.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the interesting. I was just gonna say, I had kind of a similar experience. grew up in like this super, like my parents are super, well, I don't know if my mom is still, but like my dad's crazy fucking religious and like one of these like biblical literalists and thinks that Earth's like 6,000 years old. He's one of those fucking people. So I grew up in one of those households, and I believed that shit for like a long time. I don't know. I was like 18 when I think it was like, yeah, this doesn't make any fucking sense. But like I don't know. It's like I kind of have a stronger dislike of religion because of that, because I know like my personal like my personal situation is like I'm gay and my parents like, or my dad at least, like fucking hates gay people, and he's like not shy to like admit that. He's just like, quote him, like whenever the Supreme Court legalized gay marriage back in June or whatever, he's like, that's it, this country's going to hell, like the end times are coming like next fucking week, and like all this other shit. So like I that's just been my experience with it. Like I'm sure that's definitely not a majority of it, but like that's just how I've grown up and how I've come to see it. So it's just I don't know.
Like I just wanted to say, like overall, like religion really can come up to interpretation, because people can use their religion for either to
right, and there's so many ways you can read it, and like I think it's more that you bring your own part of it like to it more so than it is what you get out of it, because you can read the same passage. Like, you can have 100 people read it, and you'll get 100 different interpretations.
Yeah,
so I think that, like...
Because I had a friend, Justin, he was extremely Christian. He was a Baptist, and he was using the Bible because he was a loving person, even though he was still homophobic.
Right.
He was a very loving person, and I actually got into a conversation about the Westboro Baptist Church, and he said that they were fucked up and what they were doing was completely wrong, and they were reading the Bible wrong. And I think that goes back to like interpretation, and then you can go into like any religion, how you read the verses.
Right.
I can definitely agree with most of you guys. I was raised by a religious family, and I went to like basically it was Bible study once a week. So I understand the Christian religion fairly decently. I was atheist for a while, but I as I've gotten older, I've just come to the standpoint of I really just don't care.
Right.
I see that some religions, some aspects of religion can be detrimental to society. I see some other sides to where it can be good. And I think it really does come down to how you read it, but you've also got to think of things like Eastern religions.
Yeah, and
it's like things like discipline, but every religious sect has its own issues. Like, there's no religion free of bad people. Even a lot of people don't know about it, but the Buddhists in Myanmar actually demonize the Muslims, and they've actually like killed like some of the Muslims in Myanmar. So it's not just the Semitic religions.
It goes out to like all religions, and
yeah, but I think a lot of religions can teach you a lot of discipline, and you can learn a lot from it, even not following it yourselves. Like me, on occasion, I like to read up on different stories in the Christian Bible or from the other religions like that. Like I read a couple of months ago about the story of Cain and Abel, and I know most of you have read it in the Bible, but for those that don't know, it's also a story that was written in the Quran, and it's one of the. I think it's an important piece to tell people about that's written about in the Quran, because the whole point of putting it in there. For those that don't know a whole lot about the story of Cain and Abel, the basis of it was that it was the first act of murder, and that was how the way I portrayed it was that Christianity portrayed Abel as the martyr, while the Islamic religion actually portrayed, just took the standpoint of what Cain did was wrong. They weren't making Abel into a martyr. They were just telling the story of the first murder and why it was wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks a lot for, especially with the rampant Islamophobia in the U.S. currently, starting from 2001 all the way till now. It's been going on for 14 years now, and it's due to all the different terror attacks that we see on a daily basis. And the issue is, we heavily publicize these ones where the Islamic extremists do things like this, but with most other religions, we don't hear much about it. Like, I don't think a lot of us probably would have known about the Buddhists in Myanmar.
No, a lot of people don't know about that.
Few things I wanted to say here. Or I guess one interesting. I just want to know if anyone else felt this, but when I was a Christian, my biggest fear actually was that one day I would become an atheist, and I want to know if anyone else ever felt something like that.
Yeah, like, whenever I was, like, fucking questioning whether or not I believed in God still, I was like, fuck, like, if I don't believe in God, that means I'm going to go to hell, and I was, like, freak me the fuck out. I was freaking out about it. I was losing sleep, like,
the other one was
quit eating. It was nuts.
If there isn't a God, then there's also not a heaven or a hell, and that also really got to me for a while. Like, it was difficult to just fully grasp that idea.
Right.
And for me, I was going through, like, I was raised Catholic and everything, but I never really embraced it. Like, I learned all the shit, and I was just like, yeah, this is what I need to say, this is what I'm going to say. But I never really, like, believed that it was true. That makes sense. I was just like, yeah, there's no way. I was always very cynical about it.
Yeah.
And when I kind of departed from the Catholic Church, I was just like, yeah, they're pretty fucking stupid.
I was considered, like, when I was really young, I didn't actually, like, I just took the stories in the Bible at face value, like, oh, they're just stories. And I somewhat became an atheist in, like, the summer between 6th and 7th grade. I just stopped believing in God, like, oh, I don't believe in God. And that was kind of my neo-atheist phase, and up until, like, 9th grade, I would say.
The only other thing I was going to say was how religion oftentimes made me feel guilty about just very normal things.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, a lot of you guys felt that way too.
Yeah, I feel like me more so, especially because I don't know, like, just being gay and then, like, trying to deal with that, and then growing up in the environment that I did was kind of like, it was just really fucking with me, because, like, I had problems with that for, like, a long time. Just like, fuck, I'm gonna go to hell, my parents aren't gonna love me, like, I'm gonna be homeless, like, all this other shit. Like, it was just fucking.
And I mean, for those who've read Thus Spoke Zarathustra, like, when you read that and you contrast it with the Christian religion, and how Nietzsche makes pretty good arguments against not just, actually more so against the morality of Christianity, of being humble, of being selfless, and all that. And I think he makes a pretty good argument, If you guys would agree or disagree, I don't know.
Yeah,
I have to
it's been a while since I've read that book, but I completely agree with you. Like, that was, the arguments that he made in there, I think, were a good critique of, like, how Christians say that you should live your life and that kind of stuff. So
I don't know if you guys read it, but his extremely short one, The Antichrist, was also a good one on religion in general. He focused a lot on Christianity, but he discussed a lot of different religions in that. And I thought that was an interesting one.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever think it ironic or, like, hypocritical that atheists will, like, more often than not, like, most of the atheists I talk to are, like, Democrats or, like liberals in that way. I just thought it was kind of, like, ironic that instead of, like, having a deity that they worship, like a god, instead they worship the state. I always thought that was kind of interesting.
Well, it's not just the state. You look at most neo-atheists nowadays, and you could consider science their religion, because everything that science says is right.
Yeah.
And we have so many factors that just can't be accounted for with human senses that our actual capabilities of comprehending what happens in this universe is impossible.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why.
I think it's also kind of funny too that like you'll get these atheists that just talk shit about religion all day long, but they don't drop like hardly anything but the belief in the deity from the religion. They still believe in the morality, and they still practice like all the social norms and all that kind of shit. And it's just
look at the people like Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris, and Richard Dawkins. They were all perceived as smart men, but nowadays you see them, and all they do is shit talk religion. They don't put forth anything. They don't.
Yeah, before Christopher Hitchens died, and he supported the Iraq War.
Dawkins was one of the worst ones. He to this day is still just constantly, most of the stuff that he does is just bashing Christianity.
Yeah, it's just fucking cringeworthy. It's terrible. Like they offer nothing.
The thing I see with a lot of atheists is most of the ones that come from Christian backgrounds don't know jack shit about any other religion outside of that. And it's not that they have issue with it, it's that because of the way they were raised under this Christian religion, they have this hatred towards it. And a lot of them will deny it, but there's a reason they focus so vehemently on Christianity as opposed to religion as a whole.
I'd just like to say that's not to say we're like all anti-science or anything.
No, not at all.
Obviously not at all. I mean, we're broadcasting this through, a computer, YouTube, and our phones. So we're not anti-science, but we're just saying that a positivist look at life is, I think, simple. And
I really, personally, I can't be, because everything that backs up veganism for me is all medical studies. So for me, when I do argue veganism with people, most of what I have to back up my claims is scientific studies from doctors, other...
Right, but I think the point that you were making is that human senses, like sensual capability, is very limited. Like
the visual, auditory, touch, feel, all that shit. Yeah,
the senses aren't infallible. Is essentially the point, I think.
Yeah. Because if you look at the rest of nature and the fact that the rainbow shrimp, for example, has a color spectrum that far rivals ours in sight, and I think the existence of these senses that rival our own is just more proof that we have no ability to comprehend it.
Right, I usually, whenever I'm making this argument to people, I usually say that, an ant has no has no clue what you're thinking about. It can't even begin to comprehend that you have a consciousness or a language, or that you can entertain these complex ideas, but, we're ants to some other species in this universe. We have we just have no clue what the fuck's going on. We're just we walk they would walk by us and not think twice. They're just they don't matter, they're not on our same level. And it's just, I feel like there's a lot of instances like that there probably are other species out there that are much more advanced than we are and have greater capabilities, but whatever.
Yeah, and
that's why there's the differences in sentient creatures, though. It's an important thing.
Right.
All stuff that's naturally occurring for what they're best suited for. For humans, we haven't. I don't personally believe we found what we were meant to do, but personally, I think most people waste most of their lives doing shit that we don't need to do.
Yeah. I think I really like going on to YouTube and finding atheists that bash religion, because it's just kind of fun to watch, because as somebody who doesn't follow religion, I think it's just kind of funny. And I came across The Amazing Atheist, and I watched 3 or 4 of his videos.
I'm sorry.
And he's a fucking hypocrite. I watched his video after the San Bernardino shooting, and he's calling for gun control, and I'm like, you say you reject religion, you say you reject the ancient religious text, which fine, that's great. But then to go on and say that you don't reject the very institution that is actually, doing shit to you in your life, stealing from you and hurting innocent people, it's pretty fucking hypocritical.
And using those same religions to justify a lot of it.
Exactly. And that's why when I was a follower of Bakunin back in the day, when I was an anarcho-collectivist, I used to be part of the shitty atheist group, and once I steered away from that, and once I went anarcho-collectivist, whenever I would argue with an atheist like that, I would always try to direct them to the book God and State, because Bakunin not only talks about how the state utilizes God, but how the state, or how God and the state are so similar, and how they could be almost identical when you look at them from an outside standpoint.
The only difference I think that I see is that religion has a common decency and its like relative lies to make sure that you can't actually verify whether they're true or not. Like it's supposedly these things happen way before your birth and they aren't going to happen until after your death. Like, okay, fine. But then you contrast that with government, which robs you and assaults you and kidnaps you and murders you in your lifetime, and it's plain for all to see. And it's just ironic that atheists reject what they can't know and accept what they do know.
Well, there's a lot of things that go into that, but the main thing I want to bring up is the fact that government does what religion does in a different sense. It doesn't make it impossible to know it. It keeps you from knowing it.
We had the 40-minute mark, just letting everybody down.
I just wanted to say something about like new atheism and the way that like I have noticed that a lot of new atheists tend to be liberals and they tend to be anti-feminist, and I guess it's becoming to the point where it's like really cringy, and it's starting to come to the point where a lot of new atheists are really just bigots, and they say that they're not homophobes, but they say really homophobic remarks, and they say a bunch of other things. And
you mean like TJ?
Yes, and I was also going to bring up Cult of Dusty, but
yes,
God, Cult of Dusty is a fucking idiot.
There's TJ. For those that don't know, I'm a big fan of. I know a lot of people hate him, but Richard or Vegan Gains on YouTube.
Oh god, yeah, I love Vegan Gains. I love his dark humor, and I don't know why people hate it so much. If you don't like it, fine. I think he's fucking hilarious.
But the thing about Richard's been on the Drunken Peasants before and argued veganism and feminism with TJ and the rest of the Drunken Peasants. And watching the footage of that just was fucking appalling. And especially seeing that Vegan Gains has actually gone out of his way to say to TJ, try this diet, you'll actually be fucking healthy, you fat fuck.
I mean, yeah, TJ really is a fat fuck.
He is. There's a shirtless picture of him on the video that Vegan Gains posted about diet advice when he talks about being on the Drunken Peasants. It's the first clip that you see when you're looking for the video is a shirtless picture of TJ. And it's
one thing keeps being mentioned by a lot of youth, that a lot of atheists now are like liberals, and there's almost a forming an ideology around atheism. Like it's become a movement, and it shouldn't be. Like all atheism is the disbelief, the rejection of a deity or God, and it's nothing more. It should never be anything more than that. They shouldn't come across with all this extra baggage. Exactly.
Just like it's like the polar opposite, because nihilism is the rejection of everything. Atheism being the rejection of merely a deity. That's I think where the trouble lies. It's some individual rejection.
That's why I like nihilism better.
Well, it's more consistent.
Yeah, exactly. Way more consistent.
And I think the thing is, obviously I'm going to correlate this back to veganism again, but I think, like most Christians utilize the Bible to justify eating meat, which is a really ridiculous argument that I've dealt with numerous times. But people like TJ that reject it, it's hypocritical, because most atheists that so strongly and vehemently support science, they oppose a diet that's scientifically proven to be healthier.
Yeah. All right, we're almost 45 minutes in. I think we should stop, because like we said, we're going to cut this episode a little bit shorter than usual.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah,
good with that. Just one more thing I wanted to add before. There was an argument that I saw. It was like maybe a month or two ago, and it was that all Christians should be anarchists. I don't know if you guys saw this because, like, as far as like the religious text goes, and like the Ten Commandments, like you shall not steal, you shall not kill, you shall not, whatever, covet, or like government breaks all of those.
Right, but I know there's this one passage in there. It's in the New Testament. I don't remember what fucking book because I just don't have any use to read it.
Are you talking to Caesar? What is Caesar's?
No, it calls all followers of the religion to be subservient to their public officials because they give their full time to governing. I think is the exact verse. Which there's so many, and it goes back. There's so many fucking ways that you can read it and interpret it. Like you could get to 20. You can justify literally every fucking ideology under the sun from that book. So I don't think that using the Bible as a justification for your ideology is legitimate.
Also, a quick aside is that the Ten Commandments you mentioned there are never actually referred to as the Ten Commandments. Noah, I believe, breaks the original tablets, takes them back, and then he gets a new set. And those were called the Ten Commandments. I can't bring it up right now, but yeah.
Yeah, Moses brought down something from whatever mountain it was, and the people weren't listening to him, so he threw them down.
Yeah.
Went back up, and God said, "Yo, Moses, why'd you do that?" He said, "Sorry, God," and he gave him a new one, and then he went back down.
Yeah. Well, all right, that's good if we want to cut it. Yep.
Thank you all for tuning in to The Left, the Right, and the Absurd. We definitely appreciate your viewership. Let us know in the comments below if you have any advice, questions, comments, concerns. Let us know. We really appreciate it. If you stayed with us this long, if you're watching it later and you weren't able to tune into the live program, we normally are on Sunday at 9:30 Eastern Time. And with that, thank you all for tuning in.
Nice.